Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pixelists. I'm Will, and today we're talking more Legend of Vox Machina. Specifically, the episode titles of Season 2 were revealed over on IMDb, and there is a lot we can glean from this information, especially in conjunction with the trailer that just recently dropped. Speaking of, I did an in-depth breakdown of that trailer. You can find that on our channel if you'd like to see it. I did a lot of speculating, and now with this new information, we can be a lot more concrete on what to expect. So before we dive in, let me give a massive spoiler warning. If you have not seen the original Critical Role campaign, this video is going to have tons of spoilers, so proceed at your own risk. But with that being said, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because as we've seen from Season 1, they made a lot of changes to better fit the narrative to this new medium. So it stands to reason they're going to do that again. And actually, from the episode titles alone, we know that they've made some changes. So all that being said, let's jump into it. All right, so to start things off here, let's take a look at the episode titles. The first thing we can glean from this is where season 2 is actually going to end, what the scope of the story is this season. And the reason I bring that up is because the Chroma Conclave arc from the original campaign was massive. So they're actually splitting this story across 2 seasons for The Legend of Vox Machina. So a lot of people have been wondering, where are they going to draw the line? Where are they going to split the narrative between the 2 seasons here? And with episode 12 being titled The Hope Devourer, we now know that the season is going to end after the Umbrasyl fight. But we can discuss that in more detail when we actually get toward the end of the season. For now, let's go episode by episode and break down what I think we can expect. So, starting with episode 1, Rise of the Chroma Conclave. I believe we can expect this episode to cover the events of 3 episodes of the main campaign, episodes 39, 40, and 41. And basically, what takes place over these 3 episodes is the Chroma Conclave attack itself, and basically the ensuing chaos and trying to regroup there afterwards. I imagine Vox Machina is going to run around, help who they can, and collect what allies they can in their immediate vicinity, including Gilmore. There may be a little storyline involving the Clasp. In these 3 episodes in the main campaign, there was a few different kind of storylines throughout this arc involving the Clasp. So we may or may not see that. It may be one of those things that's cut in service of time. But I do think there's precedent for us getting some of that, because there was a Clasp symbol that was graffitied in season 1. So, maybe. But more importantly, I think we will ultimately get Vox Machina speaking with Allura, who comes and fills them in on her history with Thordak, and then basically points them in the direction of Vasselheim, citing, that's one of the oldest cities in existence and is a wealth of knowledge. That's probably a good place to go, regroup, see what they can find out, and maybe collect more allies in their fight against these dragons. And that brings us to episode 2, The Trials of Vasselheim. Now, there is a lot to unpack here, so bear with me. Similar to episode 1, this episode's title is not lifted directly from the campaign. However, there are a few different episodes that it's kind of combining together. So first and foremost, we have a 4-episode mini arc early on in campaign 1 called The Trials of the Take, and that's episodes 18 through 21. And then we have episode 43 of campaign 1, Return to Vasselheim. And I think that episode is going to be the meat and potatoes of this episode. However, we know that we're getting Zara and Cash in the show. And the Trials of the Take is where those characters were first introduced. So I know a lot of people have been thinking maybe we are going to get the events of the Trials of the Take covered here in season 2, but I just don't think there's time for it, because so much needs to happen in Vasselheim during this episode. I just can't imagine them having the time to cover the Trials of the Take. So instead, I think that's just going to be shown in a flashback, or maybe just, covered in some expositional dialogue. And there is precedent for this, because in season 1, there was a scene where Vox Machina is sitting around a campfire at night, sharing, old war stories. And the story Vax shares is actually when he vanquishes the Rakshasa. And the Rakshasa is what they hunted in the Trials of the Take. So, not that that has to mean that this is how the timeline is playing out, but at least it makes sense, right? So I think the Trials of the Take in this show has already happened off screen before season 1. So I think the characters are going to show up in Vasselheim, go to the Slayer's Take, reminisce, maybe have those flashback scenes, but meet up with Zara and Cash, explain to them what's going on, and basically try to enlist their help. Whilst there, this is when they will go speak to Osisia, the Sphinx at the Slayer's Take, and find out more from her. Most importantly, the fact that she has a mate out there in the world that if Vox Machina can find, can probably help them on their quest. So that's the first thing that has to happen is they have to go and speak to Osisia. The next thing that has to happen is that Grog has to have his fight with Earthbreaker Grun. We know this because at the end of that encounter is when Grun tells Vox Machina about the Titan Stone Knuckles and the Deathwalker's ward, letting them know the location of the latter is actually in the Sunken Tomb, which we know episode 3 of season 2 is the Sunken Tomb. So obviously that information has to happen this episode. Where it gets fuzzy is that the way Grog leads into that encounter with Grun is because he runs into Kern, who appears to show up in the trailer. Now, Grog fought Kern twice in campaign 1 before his encounter with Grun. So similar to the Trials of the Take, I think that Grog will maybe have a flashback of his fight with Kern or, explain it in some dialogue. But I don't think the Kern fight is actually something we'll see. I think he'll run into Kern in the tavern and have a quick conversation with him, which will then lead Grog to going to see Earthbreaker Grun. And then, of course, we get the epic 1v1 with the where do you find your strength moment. Really looking forward to that. Next up on things that I think have to happen this episode is Vox Machina heading towards the Temple of Bahamut, aka the Platinum Sanctuary. Now, names may change due to copyright reasons, but importantly, they are going here to enlist aid for the fight against the Chroma Conclave. Now, they won't get the help they're looking for, but they will enlist the aid of one champion of Bahamut, and enter Lady Kima. Now, we know Stephanie Beatrice to be reprising her role this season, so it only makes sense they're going to stick to the Campaign 1 script here, and I imagine Kima joins them in order to help them in their Sunken Temple adventure. Now, other than that, these last two things I don't think have to happen, but I would imagine they will, and I will be sad if they're not. The first of which is Vox Machina haggling with the local merchant to the point of basically threatening his life. And then, of course, everyone's favorite NPC, Victor, the black powder merchant. I really hope we get a scene with that. And I think this would also be a good place to kind of plant the first seed of Ripley still being around and up to no good, since Victor mentions to Percy that only one other person has come in looking for black powder. Alrighty, I believe those to be the major events of episode 2. Thank you for bearing with me through that. And that, of course, leads us to episode 3, A Sunken Tomb. Now, this episode is a direct analog of an episode from campaign 1, and it's episode 44, A Sunken Tomb. Now, I think this one is going to be pretty straightforward. It'll just basically be Vox Machina with Zara, Cash, and probably Kima in tow, making their way to the temple, figuring out a way to, get into it at the bottom of the lake. And then once inside, exploring for the Deathwalker's ward. They will obviously have this encounter against the Beholder that we see in the trailer. And then once successful, there will be the actual tomb, which we know from campaign 1 is trapped and leads to a pretty pivotal moment in the campaign of Vex dying. So obviously there will be the big moment of the resurrection ritual and Vax, pledging his life to the Raven Queen in return for his sisters. With all that, high stakes emotional drama wrapped up, that we will then have the actual looting of the Deathwalker's ward, and of course the necklace that holds Trinket. And that'll be pretty much it for episode 3. Now, it appears they're going to be releasing episodes in batches of 3, just like they did for season 1, in which case Vex's death would make for a really interesting cliffhanger of the first set of episodes. So I could see them pushing the resurrection ritual and Vax's deal with the Raven Queen to the start of the next episode, which is episode 4, Those Who Walk Away. Now, this episode is also directly lifted from campaign 1, which is episode 45. So I imagine the contents to basically mirror that. It'll be a bunch of inter-party dynamics. We'll have Vax getting angry at Percy for getting his sister killed. We'll have Vex getting angry at Vax for trading his life for hers. And the moment I'm most excited about is we will have Grog and Scanlan going to the outhouse where Grog secretly tries to talk to Craven Edge. And this will be planting the first seeds for that story arc this season of Scanlan, registering that this might be a problem. Other than that, we will get Vex and crew investigating her new necklace, which they find to have some sort of entity within it. So they will travel on the outskirts of town and pop it out to see what's what. And that's where we will first meet Galdrick, which I imagine that's Galdrick biting Grog's manhood in the trailer. So that should be good. Um, but other than that, I think, we'll have our party moments, but then the crew will decide, hey, based on what Allura told us about Thordak and how she used to trap him in the elemental plane of fire, he must have gotten out. Keyleth is like, my Ashari people are the ones that like should have been dealing with that, so let's go check on them. So this takes us directly into episode 5, Pass Through Fire. Now, there is a campaign episode titled Passed Through Fire. It's episode 69 of the first campaign. But I don't think that's what we're going to be getting here. Instead, I think we're going to be getting the events of episode 46, Cinder Grove Revisited. So, like I said, Vox Machina is going to be heading toward the Fire Ashari in order to check on them after Thordak's escape from the elemental plane of fire. When they arrive, they're going to see most everything has been razed to the ground. There are only a handful of survivors, but among the people they find here is Keyleth's father, the leader of the Air Ashari, who has come to help them. Additionally, in the campaign episode, there was a guest star for this one, and it was Chris Hardwick playing a character named Gurn Blanston. Now, I'm not sure if we'll see Gurn necessarily in this season, but what we do know is that Vex stole her magical broom from Gurn in the campaign, so perhaps this episode, whether Gurn's in it or not, will be the one that Vex acquires her broom, and I'm interested to see how she does get it if Gurn's not in the show. So once Vox Machina deals with the remnants of Thordak's escape, closes the elemental rift or whatever the issue may be, the next thing on their to-do list is to go find this other Sphinx that Osisia told them about. So they will be heading into the Rime Cleft, which is a name change from the original show, the Frostweld. But on their way, they are passing over Western, and they can see there's some commotion going down as people are leaving offerings out for the dragons. So they will investigate and find out that Kevdak and his roaming horde of Goliaths have actually taken over the city and are in subservience to the dragons. As we know, Kevdak has the Titanstone knuckles, and that is something on Vox Machina's list. So they look to Grog to see if he's ready to do this, and he's not. So they decide to put this on hold for now and continue on with the Sphinx mission. So that's going to lead us directly into episode 6, Into the Rime Cleft. Now, like I mentioned, Rime Cleft is a name change from the original campaign where it was referred to as the Frostweld. But with that being said, there is a direct comparison to a Campaign 1 episode here called Into the Frostweld. So we're going to get the events of that, but also the following episode, A Name is Earned, into the Rime Cleft here. So essentially, we're going to have Vox Machina hunting down this Sphinx and the temple that it resides in, ultimately finding it. But on the way, I think we're probably going to get some moments of Grog kind of giving in more and more to Craven Edge. In the original campaign, he was foregoing sleep in order to maintain like his current level with the sword and by feeding it blood. Because if he were to rest and go to sleep, that would reset. So Grog is getting in deeper and deeper leading up to this Sphinx encounter. Then within the encounter, and I think this encounter is going to be beautiful animated, going to be so cool to see. We get a couple glimpses of it in the trailer. But during this encounter, Grog actually impales Pike accidentally with Craven Edge. So I think both of those story beats are going to happen and lead to a moment after the encounter, which I'll get to in a minute. But they're going to successfully complete this puzzle/combat encounter with the Sphinx, who is in turn going to reward them with information afterwards, telling them all about the vestiges of divergence and where some of these items might be that can help them face the dragons. The one first and foremost on the plate is going to be Fenthras, which the party learns is in the Feywild. So after this encounter, after again Pike has been impaled, Vox Machina is going to be, walking out or wherever, and Grog is actually going to drop dead due to his connection with Craven Edge and due to the fact that he has not been resting. Like, it has been taking more and more of his soul. So I think that moment is going to happen in the show, and it's going to lead to this, of course, resurrection ritual and everyone freaking out, but ultimately getting him back up, and then the party having this intervention over the sword. Ultimately, they are going to sever the sword's connection to Grog and then banish it to another plane of existence. Um, After all that drama is dealt with, the party's like, okay, what do we got to do next? And they decide to head to the Feywild in order to track down Finthris. Alrighty, and that's going to lead us directly into our next episode, the Fey Realm. And the events of this episode actually are going to be the condensed events from several episodes of Campaign 1. I believe it's episodes 59 through 63. And this is where time gets a bit weird soupy because these events in the campaign happened after Vox Machina fought Kevdak and Umbrasil, neither of which have happened in the show at this point. So I think just for narrative cohesiveness, they're plucking that out and shifting it forward. Just because Vox Machina is kind of going down the list, checking off their different vestiges before they fight the dragon. So it kind of makes sense that they would go try and collect Finthris before, doing the other things. So because of that, I don't know if the lead-in to the Feywild is going to be the same as it was in the campaign, because in the campaign, the Rakshasa returning disguised as Gilmore and attacking Vax is what happens immediately before they travel there. So I would love to see that, and I think we will see that, given the fact that we got the Rakshasa callback in season 1, and we're probably going to get another callback to it at the Slayer's Take in the episode 2 of this season. But I just don't know if we'll get that right now. I could even see that maybe being the season cliffhanger in the finale, but we'll talk more on that once we get there. So maybe we get the Rakshasa thing happening, but maybe not. In any case, Vox Machina is going to find themselves traveling to the Feywild. We may get them heading to that nymph pond that Grog has a history with from Campaign 1, but that might be something that gets cut in service of time. In any case, we will know we'll be seeing Garmelie, aka Artagan, as Vox Machina's official guide through the Feywild. They actually make a deal with him to be their guide to get them to where Finthris is, in exchange for them getting a couple of items for him from Singorn, which is the city that is transported to the Feywild to protect itself after the dragons started attacking. Now, Singorn is also where Vex and Vax's father lives. So first things first, the party is going to head to Singorn. They are going to talk to their father, see if they can get help against the Chroma Conclave. Going to be some good moments here, specifically the moment where Percy educates Vex's father on her new titles, which I'm really excited to see that. It has to be included. But after that, they're going to make their leave from Singorn and head towards Finthris. Garmelie is going to lead them the rest of the way. What we may or may not see is, again, the events of these episodes in the campaign spanned about 4 episodes, so there's a lot to cover here. Obviously, a lot's probably going to get shaved down. But I am curious to see if we might see the werewolf versus pixie kind of war, which we touched on in the episodes. Vox Machina ends up siding with the werewolves and helps them free themselves from this like prison, essentially, they were locked in by the pixies. And the leader of the werewolves actually helps Vox Machina in the Finthris fight. So we'll see if that happens. But one way or another, they will reach the tree which holds Finthris, and where they will end up having that encounter. But before we get there, I'm bleeding into the next episode. So I think episode 7 will basically just be most of the Feywild shenanigans except for the actual encounter with Sondor. It'll just be interesting to see which exact little story beats from these episodes in the campaign makes it in. Appreciate you bearing with me through that long one. And that's going to lead us directly into episode 8, the Echo Tree. So I assume this episode is mostly going to be them actually finding the tree that Finthris is in and then having this encounter with Sondor. The encounter should be awesome. Like I said, the werewolf leader might show up. I think his name was Ukarat. Not looking at it right now, but I think that was it. So it'll be interesting to see if he shows up. But we're gonna have the encounter. I'm sure it's gonna be gorgeous. There's I don't think any shots from this encounter in the trailer, so it's cool that they're kind of keeping that close to the chest. So we'll have that. They'll be successful. Obviously, Vex will get Fenthris, and after they leave that encounter, they will run into Artagan in his true Archfey form. Previously, as Garmelie, he had been disguising himself. Um, so they'll have that introduction with him. And then I assume we're going to head back to the Prime Material plane now to deal with Kevdak. And that's going to lead us directly into episode 9, A Test of Pride. Now, this is an episode directly lifted from the campaign, episode 51. So I imagine what we're going to get here is basically a retelling of that episode, which is mostly going to be Vox Machina preparing for and engaging in this battle for Western and this battle against Kevdak. So like I mentioned earlier, they're going to find out that Kevdak and his roaming horde have taken over Western and are in subservience to the dragons, giving them offerings every couple days or whatever it may be. Important to note here is that Pike's great-great-grandfather, I might not have had the right amount of greats there, but Pike's grandfather is Wilhand Trickfoot, who we know to be in this season, played by Henry Winkler. He lives in Western, so there's some personal ties here beyond just the Grog thing. And the city of Western is basically being held prisoner by Kevdak and his horde. So Vox Machina is going to have to figure out, okay, how do we do this? And how do we make sure that people are okay? So I think this episode is going to be all about them concocting a plan to try and get the people of Western out safely while Grog still has his one-on-one with Kevdak. And they're going to think the one-on-one is the way to go because Vox Machina is not going to feel prepared to take on Kevdak and the entire horde. So at dawn we plan, basically, this episode. They're going to set traps. They're going to infiltrate, sneak in, see what they can find out, try to lure barbarians into their traps. I'm sure other elements of this episode is we're probably going to see Dr. Dranzel and Kaylee because they were in Western in the campaign when this happened and Scanlan ran into them. Now, so far, I haven't mentioned a spot where they would have showed up earlier in the campaign because I really think we'll see them before he just runs into them here. But I just don't know where there's space for it. But there easily could be at the end or the beginning of any of these episodes, like after the main conflict is resolved. Like, maybe after they get back from the Feywild, but before they move on to the next thing or, anything like that. But anyway, I believe we'll see Kaylee and Dr. Dranzel. They'll be a part of it. But ultimately, the episode will end with Grog challenging Kevdak to one-on-one combat, which he accepts. But then he basically gets beat down. And I think the episode will end with his iconic line of dropping to his knees and yelling, Vox Machina, fuck shit up. And that'll lead us directly into the next episode. Episode 10, The Kill Box. Now, this is also a direct episode from the campaign, episode 52. But I think this is going to cover episode 52 and 53. So like I said, at the end of the last episode, Grog calls for Vox Machina to help him. And so everyone's going to jump in, and we're basically going to have an all-out war happening in the town square here of Western. So I think most of the episode will be this battle. I think it'll be epic. There's going to be a lot of awesome things to look forward to. Namely, we have the kill shot of Grog, plummeting from the necklace. We get a look at that in the trailer. So clearly, we're getting a pretty faithful retelling of this encounter, which one of my favorite moments from campaign 1. I probably say stuff like that a lot, but honestly, top 3 moments from the whole campaign for me. So we'll get that. I think we'll get the immediate repercussions after the battle. They'll probably deal with Greenbeard, Zanror, Kevdak's son, and advisor. Characters may change, may be condensed into one, that type of thing. But ultimately, I think Zanror, Kevdak's son, or his successor, will be there. Grog will basically make an alliance with them, and the two of them will decide, hey, Vox Machina plus the Horde together, we can take down this dragon, and that'll be what they set out to do. Um, so in the meantime, there everyone's gonna rest, rehabilitate before the next day, and I think this is when Vox Machina will go try and find Pike's great great grandfather Wilhand. They'll do that. We may get Scanlan asking him for his daughter's hand or his great great granddaughter's hand in marriage, and we may also actually get Scanlan asking Pike to marry him. If this does happen, she will say, she doesn't have an answer for him right now. Um, in the campaign, there was this storyline about like a side quest they had been given to retrieve this circlet that controls this golem that they call Fastbender. I don't think we'll get that here. I just think that's one of these things that could be cut for time. But we'll have the fight, we'll have the alliance brought together, and then we will have the Wilhand storyline. And that's going to bring us to the final two episodes of the season, starting with episode 11, Belly of the Beast. Now, this is an episode lifted directly from the campaign, episode 54. So I think we can, imagine to see a lot of the same stuff here, which is basically going to be a lot of planning for this dragon encounter. Vox Machina working with the Goliath Horde, trying to set traps and just come up with a good battle plan to hopefully, defeat Umbrasyl. So I think that'll be a lot of the episode, but then we'll probably get a lot of character moments as well. I mentioned the whole Wilhand Pike Scanlan proposal stuff in the last episode. We might get some of that here if there's more space for it. But I also think we'll get some Scanlan and Kaylee interactions as well, because like I mentioned, her and Dr. Dranzel will have been in Western, presumably. So there seems to be some good space for moments between those two there. And then finally, I think we will have the start of the Umbrasyl encounter towards the end of the episode, which is going to include, obviously, Vax and Scanlan bravely going where no man has gone before. Which is going to be a little different from the campaign because Scanlan used Dimension Door to teleport them inside, and now we're getting a little bit, Yep. Anyway, so that I think will be the end of the episode, and I think it'll be kind of a cliffhanger with Scanlan and Vax being inside of Umbrasyl as he takes off to fly away and get away from this combat. Probably breaks out of whatever trap they've got him in and flies back to his lair. So we'll have Scanlan Vax inside the dragon, and Grog will probably stab into the dragon with his weapon and be like on for the ride as well. So I think the cliffhanger will be that those three are getting carried away, and the rest of Vox Machina is going to have to hightail and chase them to try to help them out. And that brings us to the finale of season 2, episode 12, The Hope Devourer. Now, there's no episode titled The Hope Devourer from campaign 1, but episode 55 is called Umbrasyl, which is a synonym in this case. So I believe the episode is going to cover the contents of that, but also probably the contents of episode 56 as well. So we'll pick up with Vox Machina, chasing after Umbrasyl with their 3 allies attached or inside of him. He will ultimately make it back to his lair. Vax, Scanlan, and Grog at various points before that will detach or get out. Vox Machina will all reconvene. What will be interesting to see, rather, is if Shale shows up. Now, in this episode in the campaign, there was a guest character named Shale, which was played by Chris Perkins, who was actually a member of the Goliath Horde that had been sent on a scouting party to basically go check out Umbrasyl's lair. So Vox Machina reconvenes and runs into this scouting party. So maybe we'll see that. Maybe we'll see Shale. Maybe we'll have a guest appearance from Chris Perkins. But wouldn't be totally surprised if that element of it was cut. Anyway, Vox Machina reconvenes and attacks Umbrasyl in his home lair, or not his home, but his current makeshift home for the overtaking of Amon. But they will have the encounter. It'll be awesome, I'm sure. Big boss battle, dragon fight, of season 2. So we'll have that. I think that'll probably be, at least the first third, if not longer, of the episode. They're obviously going to be successful. We'll have our awesome loot of all the gold. And of course, Vox Machina will decide to give most of this back to the citizens of Westerland since that's where it came from. They'll travel back to Western. I'm sure there will be a lot of character moments here as the season is wrapping up. But insofar as what we could expect moving forward from here and maybe what kind of cliffhanger we're going to get for the end of season 2, really it's anyone's guess, especially because, like I said, that Feywild arc that would normally be coming now, as far as what happened in the original campaign, that's already happened in the show. So really, I could see it being a couple of different things we get here. There is a moment with Raishan that happens in the campaign, and it doesn't happen right now. It actually happens a little bit later, but you know, timey-wimey, shifty shofty, time is a weird soup action. They could easily put it here, where Vox Machina finds out that Seeker Assume has actually just been Raishan in disguise, and Raishan asks them for help to take down Thordak. That would be a really powerful cliffhanger, I think, and that's probably my best guess for what happens. Just how exactly they get there, I'm not entirely sure. Another option could be the whole Rakshasa thing, which we've talked about a couple times in this video, so I won't entirely retread it. But if it doesn't happen prior to the Feywild episode, it would be a really cool cliffhanger, I feel like, to kind of have the whole element of Gilmore attacking Vax and being like, what the heck? I'm not sure, like, if that is what they do, I'm not sure, like, where they would cut to credits. Like, would they reveal that it wasn't actually Gilmore or not? I don't know. So my money's not on this, but that would be fun. And then finally, we have the possibility for a cliffhanger with Ripley. I'm pretty sure it's been confirmed that Ripley's voice actor, I want to say Kelly Ann Hugh, but I'm not looking at it right now, but I'm fairly confident that's right. That she is returning for this season, and clearly I have mentioned Ripley once, but not an actual appearance from her. But so if that's true, then she's showing up somewhere, right? And that could mean she's showing up in the cliffhanger. There's a whole little arc, the Glint Shore arc, let's call it, where they chase after Ripley because she has one of the vestiges. I don't think there's room for that to happen in any of the episodes we've just covered. So I'd be really surprised if it did. So maybe the cliffhanger is leading into that. You know, if we got the little clue of someone else shopping for black powder from Victor, if that scene ends up happening, then that would be a nice setup for this. So maybe they find out something else that points them towards Ripley's activities, and maybe even the fact that she has a vestige. So they're like, okay, we gotta go get after this, and of course Percy is going to be all about it. So that could be a potential angle for the cliffhanger. Um, those are my main three guesses. I'm sure it could be other things as well, and I would love to hear y'all's thoughts in the comments if you have any particular theory on what we might get. But yeah, other than that, I think it'll basically just be, you know, the end of the Umbrasyl fight, some character moments, and then set up for whatever it is going to be the cliffhanger. Um, and of course, we know, I mean, obviously, since we know what happens in the rest of the Chroma Conclave arc, in season 3, we've got to have the Vorogal fight, we've got to have the Thordak fight, and we've got to have the Raishan stuff. So I mentioned a bit about Raishan, which would also be the Thordak angle. So maybe there's a cliffhanger involving Vorogal to some extent. Maybe they learn Draconia has been destroyed. But since Draconia hasn't really been mentioned, and obviously Tiberius isn't in this canon, that's not really going to hold very much weight as a cliffhanger. So I don't really see it being that, but potential, right? Um, and before I get just way too rambly, which I think that ship's already sailed, I think I'm gonna leave it there for the breakdown. This actually, when the episode titles came out and I had this idea to do the video, I thought it would be fairly quick, and here we are, like 30 minutes later. So for anybody that made it this far, I appreciate you bearing with me, fellow super nerdy critters unite. Anyway, let me give the quick spiel. We have a podcast. I think this side. I don't know. We have a podcast. We have socials. Check those out. And as always, would love to hear from you guys in the comments. And is it January 20th yet?